Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host, Dom Corbs, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Corbs, who is now back from skiing, and we are reviewing, the wild card weekend. So we're going to be going through every game with one takeaway from each team. So both of us. So from each game, there's going to be 4 takes, basically. We're going to get right into it. Nu, are you ready?
I can't wait, Dom. It was a good weekend of football. Excited for the next round. Let's get down to it.
All right. So Texans Chargers 32-12 to the Texans in the end. A very generous scoreline considering how the game actually went, especially in those first 2 or 3 quarters. We're starting with the Texans then, Nu. What was your take for the Texans from this game?
Both teams are trying their hardest to lose this game, especially in the first half. The football was at times unwatchable. And I've got a similar takeaway for both teams, but I'll start off with the Texans. And with the Texans is they're not a real postseason threat. They won this game by the Chargers simply playing worse. There's no chance they're beating the Chiefs, and if they do beat the Chiefs, there's no chance of them going deep. So I think for next season, they really need to evaluate where they are as a team, because they should be a team in an easy division that should be able to make deep postseason runs. And they have the talent to do it, so I think they just need to work out why is it not all clicking in the postseason.
Interesting, because I agree with you. I think there's a lot that the Texans need to address this offseason, most notably someone to pass protect for CJ Stroud and probably another wide receiver with Tank Dell's really horrific injury. But my take is kind of almost the antithesis of that, weirdly, actually, is that my take here is that the pass rush is the only playoff level unit of this team, which I agree with you, which is in line with what you're saying. But I think that could weirdly be enough. If there is going to be an upset, it's going to be because of our pass rush. I mean, Justin Herbert in this game was pressured on 19 of his 31 dropbacks, which is over 60%. And he was sacked 4 times. That's a massive reason as to why Justin Herbert really struggled in this game and why the Chargers offense really struggled, is because the Texans pass rush, even against good tackles like Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, were dominating. Will Anderson, 6 pressures, 2 sacks, pass rush win rate of 23.1%. Danico Autry, 4 pressures, 1 sack, 37.5% pass rush win rate. Danielle Hunter, 5 pressures, 17.2% pass rush win rate. These guys are feasting along the Texans defensive line. And yeah, the Chargers interior offensive line isn't very good, but the Texans pass rush, I think, is a playoff level. And that counts for a lot at this time of year, especially, I think, against 2 weaker tackles that the Chiefs have when their interior offensive line is really strong, but their tackles are the weak point of that offensive line, relatively speaking. And if the Texans have any hope, it's our pass rush against those tackles. But you're right, Nu. Texans interior offensive line, terrible. Wide receivers, terrible. Offensive play calling, terrible. CJ Stroud had 4 turnover-worthy plays in this game, which is when you're putting the ball at risk of being turned over, not necessarily actually turned over.
Well, Justin Herbert had 4 turnovers himself. So it's who could really play worse. And that brings me on to my second take, which is the Chargers are the Chargers. You can take the Chargers out of San Diego, but you can't take... They will always still be the Chargers. They always find ways to lose games that they shouldn't. It's as simple as that. If you look back to when they had Phillip Rivers at the quarterback, they had the number 1 scoring defense and the number 1 scoring offense, missed the playoffs. Last time in the playoffs against the Jags, they fumbled a 28-point lead, I believe, Dom, against the Trevor Lawrence-led Jags. This one, Justin Herbert, 3 interceptions all year, 4 in the postseason. No matter how hard you try, no matter how many regime changes there are, the Chargers will always be the Chargers, and they always find ways to choke in the playoffs.
I think that's harsh there, Nu. I think that's harsh because my take here is that I think we need to have a nuanced conversation about Justin Herbert, which is kind of linked to what you're saying, right? 4 interceptions, 3 of those egregious, definitely on him.
Terrible throws.
Yeah, the Ladd McConkey one, it was close, but those are the margins you work with in the playoffs. If he sailed the ball in between his hands or just out of reach of his hands, really, pick 6. But the one to Will Disley, I don't think is on Justin Herbert. But the 3 of those 4 turnover-worthy plays were definitely. But here's the thing with Justin Herbert, is that from week 7 onwards, he was playing at a top 5 to 7 level in the league, I would say. He's pushing the ball down the field, not turning it over. Like you say, he's only had 3 in the whole season and then 4 in this game. And fundamentally, in the playoffs, you do or die with your quarterback. Your quarterback needs to turn up. And unfortunately, Justin Herbert really did not. I mean, what do you think about his wide receiver corner?
I think, obviously, it needs some improvement. Quincy Johnson still can't catch the ball. Lad McConkey has performed well above expectations. Will Dissly is very much a Jim Harbaugh style blocking tight end. Another receiver would really elevate their team. But I think there's something to work with there. I don't think it's bottom 5.
You don't think it's bottom 5? Are you joking?
There's a lot of teams with worse wide receiver calls out there.
Name me 2.
Okay, you might have me there. I can't think off the top of my head.
No.
You put me on the
All
spot, Dom. That's not fair.
I'm putting you on the spot there. While you're potentially thinking of that, this is the stat line from the Chargers wide receiver in this game. Lad McConkey, 9 receptions, 197 yards, which averaging almost 22 yards a catch and 1 touchdown. The next is Will Dissly, 2 receptions, 16. Tucker Fisk, the fullback, 1 catch, 15 yards. DJ Chark, 1 catch, 10 yards. Darius Davis, 1 catch, 4 yards. Quentin Johnston, 5 targets, 0 receptions. Dropped a big play, not working back to the ball. And people have highlighted that as being like, yeah, this guy's had his problems, like whatever. But that is the play a proper wide receiver actually makes, which is, Herbert rolling out to his right, throwing a kind of fade / comeback to Quentin Johnston. And Quentin Johnston obviously just fumbles the entire thing, doesn't even come back for it. I think it hits like his toe and bounces off. Like, it was an ugly, ugly game from everyone else, essentially, on the Chargers offense, receiving-wise, barring Lad McConkey, who had one of the best games by a rookie in the playoffs ever. I think he did have the most yards by a rookie in the playoffs. But Lad McConkey, as I said in the draft, and as I'm sure you'd agree, the whole point of why he wasn't drafted with like a top 30 pick is because he's limited by his size as to what he can do. Yes, he can rack up 9 receptions for 197 yards, absolutely. But he isn't that alpha wide receiver one who, by having that stat line, means you're going to win the game because of the way he wins and how he wins and him mostly operating from the slot. Like, you need to have, he's a great 1B, way better than I thought he would be. I thought he'd be a nice 2, but he is a wide receiver 1B, but you need that 1A. And if you don't have someone that can consistently win outside the numbers deep down the field, which the Chargers fundamentally do not have, your quarterback is going to struggle, right?
Well, Dom, you could argue this is chicken or egg to some degree, but the Chargers rely on their run game. J.K. Dobbins is the beating heart of that Chargers offense. Although Justin Herbert was playing at a superstar level and they do need more receivers, it's all built off the run game. Without J.K. Dobbins, the Chargers don't make the playoffs. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the new Chargers regime, Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, obviously favour the run game and favour ground and pound football and not making mistakes over, say, the Ben Johnson and the Lions kind of line of thinking, well, we'll score as many points as possible, F everything else, basically. But I don't think the problem with relying on the run game now is that once you get 2 scores behind, you become pretty one-dimensional. Like, the Chargers have not had a boat race this season, and this game was not a boat race, despite the scoreline. Like, it was a ground and pound game, and the Chargers, that's the kind of game where the Chargers should come out on top. But they didn't because of Justin Herbert, which we've discussed, and obviously, like, we definitely place the blame of this loss at his feet. But what I think you're trying to kind of say is that chicken and egg with, if they have good pass catchers, Justin Herbert plays better, but if Justin Herbert plays better, then they might kind of reveal some good pass catchers.
Well, no, I'm saying that the offense is fundamentally built on the run game. They drafted Joe Alt over Malik Neighbors this very draft. And they value that much more than they do value the pass game. And obviously it only works when you're ahead and the defense and the run game, controlling the game, you grind down the other team. But I think they will add another wide receiver this year, and I think that'll push them to the Super Bowl contention, because I think they were playing above their means this year, to be honest with you.
No, I agree with you. I think that if the Chargers were like, say, the Bengals, who narrowly missed out on making the playoffs, we'd be looking at this Chargers season very differently. But it's kind of ended with a bit of a bad taste in everyone's mouth because Justin Herbert, who people crowned, and myself included here, crowned a bit too early as being up there with the likes of Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and that kind of top tier of quarterback, has probably shown that despite him having the physical tools, he hasn't exactly been able to put it all together for a whole season, and indeed in the playoffs when it really matters. So, Ravens, Steelers, 28-14 to the Ravens. Honestly, probably the worst game of the wild card round, I would say. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a Texans fan, but my take here, Nu, is that the Ravens are going to manhandle you if you're not up for it. Derrick Henry, 186 yards, 142 yards after contact, which is a season high. And then that was against the Steelers, a division rival, who tend to play their division rivals quite close in the playoffs. He had 7 broken tackles. Lamar Jackson had 81 rush yards as well. The team rushed for near on 300 total rush yards. So if you're not up for it, the Ravens are going to run you over.
Yeah, Dom, my take's sort of similar to that. I don't know how the Ravens are losing. I don't know anyone who wants to play the Ravens, Dom, because they have the best rush attack in the NFL. You've got Derrick Henry, you've got Lamar Jackson. They'll scheme him open anyway. But you've also got one of the MVP candidates, if not the MVP, according to many, who can sling the rock as accurate and as far as the best of them. If you're a defensive coordinator, how on earth do you scheme against this Ravens team? They look really unbeatable. And I can't say that about any of the other teams. You know, even the Bills, the Chiefs, they look beatable in games. But in the back half of this season, the Ravens don't look like they're losing. They're dominating every single snap in terms of physicality, in terms of speed, and in terms of play calling. And if you're the Bills or the Chiefs or even anyone in the NFC, you are terrified about the possibility of playing the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I think you've nailed that there, Nu. And I kind of have some more stats to talk about with regards to what you're saying to kind of flesh that out a bit. Is that the reason why why the Ravens feel so great now is because they finally sorted out their defense, which was kind of holding them back at the beginning of this season. Do you remember it was like, well, yeah, the rush attack is great, Lamar Jackson's great, but the Ravens secondary is open for sale, basically. Like, you can have whatever you want against them. But the defensive coordinator has completely switched that around. Basically, from week 10 onwards, the players on that defense have completely shifted. So Kyle Hamilton was playing mostly in the box, kind of roaming around the defense. Now after week 10, he's playing mostly in as a free safety. Again, Darius Washington, who, shout out to him, by the way, 5'8", 177 pounds. He is flying around the field as well. He's been playing way more full free safety snaps. He had 5 in week 3, and that is now at 50 at week 11 and onwards. And Marlon Humphrey is now playing primarily as a slot corner. So he's moved those pieces around, and suddenly the defense is playing up to where the offense is playing. And it's a team-wide commitment to being physical, and they've been that all season, and it's finally now got to the point where the defense has caught up with the offense. And you're right, they look, as of kind of week 10, so for the last, 9-10 weeks now, have looked like the best team in the league on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, Don, also saw Nate Wiggins as well, who's been an amazing rookie corner for them, who's really come on leaps and bounds. Again, another undersized guy. Always shows you best player available in the draft. It's what the Ravens do every year, and it always works. But yeah, Dom, I think the Ravens, probably the Super Bowl favourites right now. That's what I would say, and they would be my odds-on pick.
Well, I think the matchup now between the Bills and the Ravens is essentially the Super Bowl, and it's not even the AFC Championship game, which is mental. And we'll talk about the Bills in just a second. But before we get to that, Nu, what's your take on the Steelers?
My take on the Steelers is always my take on the Steelers. I am such a Steelers hater to my very core. Preseason, mid-season, postseason, it's always the same. You know, if you have an average quarterback with Arthur Smith calling plays, you're never going to get far in the postseason. This team reached the classic Steelers winning season and then just gave up, as they do every single year. I don't think they've won a playoff game since 2015. I think it's been almost a decade, give or take, the last time the Steelers won a playoff game. As a Steelers fan, it must be so frustrating just being okay, just being good enough. And it's always held them back from really progressing as a team because they never have a bad draft pick where they can get, a superstar player. They never spend big in free agency either. Their team is always going to be 9-7, and I think it's going to be the same next year. They're the odds-on favourite to sign Aaron Rodgers. So if I'm a Steelers fan, it's just general frustration. And did you ever think you were going to win this game?
Yeah, I mean, this was the easiest game to call, I think, of the whole wild card. Even with Bills-Broncos, I think there was a non-outside chance that the Broncos could upset the Bills' game plan, and especially with their defense kind of run it down their throats. But yeah, the Steelers were never going to win this game, like you said. And my take, is more of a question. What is a question? Should it be the end of the Mike Tomlin era? Like, they have this kind of Mike Tomlin paradox where you get a 10-win season, but then you also get a first-round playoff exit. And it's like, well, the 10-win season is pretty useless if we have a first-round playoff exit. They've now lost 5 games in a row this season. And they have the same amount of postseason wins as the New York Jets have had in the last 8 years, which is 0, as you were saying, almost a decade of not having a single playoff win. Despite, I think, almost making the playoffs every year in those times. Maybe not with the Kenny Pickett era, but like like you say, they've not exactly had a top 10 pick in recent years, unless I'm missing something massively. But yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin, I think, is a great head coach. I don't like this. What I'm saying is that I think it requires a bit more nuance than simply like Mike Tomlin's bad, they should get fired. I think Mike Tomlin is a great coach. I mean, look at what he's managed to do with players like Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, George Pickens, who have been nut jobs basically outside of the league. Like, managing to keep a lid on these players is really impressive, and he definitely gets the most out of his players and is the poster child for the CEO head coach. I just kind of think that he's taken the Steelers as far as he can, and they kind of need a new lease of life. And I really think that both parties are holding the other back here. Like, I think if you put Tomlin in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, if you put him in New England with Drake May, like, if you already give him a team that has a quarterback, not less so the Bears, because I think the Bears need to actually develop Caleb Williams like really as a point of urgency. But if you give this man a quarterback and just kind of let him be essentially the Jim Harbaugh in the Ravens kind of vibe, or is it John Harbaugh? I can never remember which one it is.
Yeah, so I realised when I said Jim Harbaugh earlier, I mixed them up. I'm pretty sure it's Jim and John. Which makes
I know it's Jim and John, but which one's which?
Yeah, no, it's always hard to remember.
But essentially Harbaugh in Baltimore. That kind of style I think would work really well. So yeah, I think it probably should be the end of Mike Tomlin. Not because I think he's a bad coach. I don't want him chased out of Pittsburgh. I just think it's kind of reached its natural end.
Yeah, Dom, I agree. I saw so many things. Also, another thing is, where's the Tomlin coaching tree? I saw this take online earlier, which is, you see Shanahan's, you see the Andy Reids. They all have a coaching tree. No one from Mike Tomlin's staff ever goes on to become head coaches, which I think is also another problem with the CEO head coach style.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like Ben Johnson isn't I wouldn't call Ben Johnson the Dan Campbell coaching tree. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no.
If you, what's the Harbaugh coaching tree from Baltimore as well? Me not knowing which one is which is really annoying me. I do know, but I'm just worried I'm going to perpetually know them wrong. But I agree. But that's the downside of a CEO head coach, is that they're not an offensive or defensive mind. So there isn't going to be the tree for them. But also, before we move on, got to give a shout out to Aaron Nutman for being at the game. He deserves one. He's seen a game. He's a part of the Ravens flock.
Go
Nutman,
flock, go.
I rate that. So, Bills Broncos news 31-7. Kick us off with the Bills.
So I'll kick you off with the Bills. There is cause for concern for the Bills, is what I was thinking. Watching the first half of that game, the scoreline, obviously they ran away with it in the second half, but they really did look beatable in that first half of the game. And it's because Amari Cooper and that wide receiver core, none of them stepped up. No, you've got Shakir, you've obviously got Kincaid and Dawson Knox, but I really think they need to add another receiver, either in the draft or free agency next year, because the run game is great and Josh Allen is great, but I think when they go up against these really good teams, will their lackluster receiver core be able to play up to that level? And I think it's a real cause for concern for the Bills.
You know what? I was a bit hesitant at that take at the beginning, but I actually think where you ended up is definitely something I can get on board with, which is that the wide receiver core can look a little bit shaky. And it's something we pointed out at the beginning of the season when we were doing our preseason stuff news. That we, do you remember when we read out the depth chart and we're like, who are they going to start at outside wide receiver? And
Curtis
they've signed Amari
Samuel
Cooper. But he's not exactly been the Amari Cooper of old. He's missed time. He's been inconsistent. So yeah, I agree with you. And I think, though, for me, the Bills' offense looks like a powerhouse, even despite that, which is my take.
Yeah.
Like, Josh Allen and the Bills put up 31 unanswered points against the defense, which previously was number one in defensive EPA per play. Like, the Broncos' defense is basically the reason why they made the postseason, if we're being honest with ourselves. And the Bills' offense dog-walked them. Like, I really did not expect this game to be, despite the difference in teams, I think the Bills were going to win, and the Broncos were kind of are a plucky team that it's great to be in the playoffs at all. But I didn't think it would be 31 unanswered points, 31-7. So, that's something that I think is a bit of a stinger for the Broncos, considering how their season was going and stuff. But for me, the Bills' offense has evolved so well under Joe Brady. Like, I really don't think that Joe Brady is getting enough praise here.
He's on the same tier as Ben Johnson in terms of coaching candidates, in terms of someone who is the team, effectively. He is the offense. He is Josh Allen. Without Joe Brady, this team is not where it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he took over from Ken Dorsey in the middle of last season, and the Bills' offense hasn't looked back. And what he's doing, I think, is so... It's not like Ben Johnson where you're getting Penei Sewell to catch a pass and you're doing all these laterals and loads of fantasy stuff. Like, the Bills are almost the antithesis of that. Like, the whole point of the Bills' offense is to not rely on Josh Allen to play hero ball. Obviously, he can do it, and we've seen him do it against the Lions, namely, and against the Rams as well towards the end of the season. Like, he can definitely play hero ball. But in this game, where was it? In this game, James Cook had 23 carries for 120 yards. Like, in the Bills of old, they're not running their running back that many times because they want to do it all with Josh Allen. And they play with an extra offensive lineman on the field more than anyone in the league at 16% of the time, as high as 18% towards the end of the season when there was like snow and stuff. And they just physically dominate teams at the line of scrimmage. And Allen can be an extra downhill body in the run game. Like, he's a big unit, hard to bring down. You put 6 offensive linemen in front of Josh Allen and let Josh Allen run downhill on like QB power. And then also have him with 6 offensive linemen again, throwing a deep shot to Dawson Knox, which happened in this game, for example. How are you meant to defend that? Like, it's just, I love the Bills' offense. I love Joe Brady. I really think he's not getting the kind of attention he deserves. And also, they love 12 personnel. And those tight ends, Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, are kind of both receivers first and then tight ends. Like, it's not even like a Meyer and a Bauer situation in Las Vegas, for example, where like one is a blocking tight end and one is the receiving guy. Like, even Dawson Knox, who definitely has more blocking chops than Dalton Kincaid, is a receiver first. And they both had big chunk plays in this game. So for me, this is the best version of Josh Allen we've seen ever. And I think it's the best version of the Bills offense we've seen ever. And we've seen amazing versions of both of those things.
Well, Dom, on that 3rd and 3 with the Josh Allen QB power, it reminded me a lot of the jersey I'm repping now, 2015 Cam Newton. I think there really are shades of it there.
That is a great take.
No, the QB power, just putting the team on your back, the aura, the flair he's playing with. I love it, Dom. And you're right, I was being too harsh on them, and I cannot wait for Sunday, 9 p.m. 11 p.m., I believe, UK time. Bills, Ravens, Super Bowl.
That is
amazing.
That is going to be total cinema. Like, it's going to be unbelievable.
Martin Scorsese meme.
Yeah,
I will be there.
Yeah,
I will be there.
So good. Broncos, new. What's your take?
So my Broncos take sort of relates to why I think they were able to run up the score in the second half, because the Broncos defense was playing the Bills to a very good game. It was 10-7 at the half. The Bills offense was stalling, couldn't get into the red zone, but the Broncos could not control the time of possession on offense. The defense was on the field for almost 3 whole quarters. You're not going to win a game with a rookie quarterback doing that. And that's because they do not have a run game. They do not have a bad offensive line. You've got Garrett Bowles, good tackle. They've got quite a strong interior offensive line, but they just never establish the run. Sean Payton, at the top of his play sheet, has run the ball in Sharpie on every single one of his play sheets. Yeah, he clearly must be illiterate because he never does it. If the Broncos were able to establish the run game, help out Bo Nix, help the screen game, this game would have been a lot closer.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Neil. What I've got here for the Broncos is good team, impressive season compared to expectations, but they're far from being a great one because I think Bo Nix needs more weapons. He was the leading rusher in this team. Like, Bo Nix, look, he is the poster child for being quote-unquote sneaky athletic,
First one in,
real
last
lunch
one
pail
out.
guy, first in, last out, real coach's kid. I'd let him date my daughter. But he can't be the leading rusher. Like, he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not a Jaden Daniels. Like, yeah, he's someone that can run the ball when he needs to. But if he's your leading rusher, you've had a bad rushing game. And Courtland Sutton is his only every down wide receiver of note. The Broncos were 2 of 9 on 3rd down in this game. Nix was missing throws. Wide receivers were dropping passes. Running backs weren't getting yards when they should have got them. 7 points in a playoff game, whatever way you cut it, even from a perspective of they're the 7th seed, they're lucky to be there, is a bad performance. And yeah, they had a good season. They look promising. They're on the right trajectory. But I think there's a lot to work on for this team to properly be competitive.
Yeah, well, again, Dom, I agree, but the box score does not show the first half especially. There's a missed field goal. It should have been 10-10 going into the half. And if they were able to keep that pressure, it would have been a close game, but the Bills scored 1 touchdown, then it was complete panic. Rookie quarterback at the helm, complete panic, interception, touchdown, 3 and out, touchdown, and game was over by the 3rd. It really just showed the different class between the two teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Broncos came out perfectly with that deep touchdown, and then it could have been 10-0 at the half, like you said, and then they could have started running the ball and taking possessions away from the Bills. But you just can't compete when in a boat race against Josh Allen. Like, if it becomes a game of who can score the most points, Josh Allen is going to win that 10 times out of 10. So you're right. You're right to point out that at the beginning, they had the exact script they wanted. They could start running the ball, taking time away, and it just got away from them, despite a touchdown lead. Eagles, Packers, 22-10 to the Eagles. Packers season ends, Eagles advance. What's your take on the Eagles, New?
My take on the Eagles is, I said before in a previous episode that I don't believe Jalen Hurts can take this team to the Super Bowl. And I still think that's right, because I think their defense and Saquon Barkley is going to take them to the Super Bowl. I think their defense is so underrated. What Vic Fangio has done to this defense is insane. Last year, they were 31st ranked overall defense. This year, top 5 in almost every single category. Quintana Bay, Cooper DeJean, obviously their amazing pass rush with
Zach Bourne,
Jaden Carter. The list goes on, of course. But that defense wins championships, and it's an old saying, and you could argue with how up to date it is. But that defense and that rushing attack is so elite, and I believe they can shut down any offense, which is scary for the Lions. But I believe they can make it to the Super Bowl on the back of that, not because of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I agree with you, New. My take here is that Howie Roseman has built an amazing roster, but
Ridiculous.
I think Jalen Hurts in the passing game at the moment is quietly the weak link. I mean, like you say, New, defensively, the Eagles played amazingly, and they are so stacked. They were able to play a light box, meaning that you have essentially less players than the offense do in the run game, which allows you to have more numbers in the passing game. And even with a light box, which usually means it's easier to run the ball, Josh Jacobs at one point in the game was only averaging 2.3 yards per carry. That's because they have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, like in the interior, ready to go. They've got the versatility of Zach Bourne, the all-pro linebacker who the Eagles poached from the Saints as like a special teamer on a one-year contract, paying him pennies on the dollar, which he'll get this year. Opens up the defense. They can shift their front pre-snap, so they have 4 down defensive linemen. So the offensive lineman goes, okay, this is how we're going to block this play as a result of what we're seeing now. Zach Bourne will come and also be that extra lineman on the line. Changes everything completely, and the offense has to compute that in milliseconds, really. And he played an amazing game. It shows in the stat line. He got a pick, he was all over the field. Like, he is like the linchpin of this Eagles defense, which is crazy to say given the amount of talent that there is on it. And I think, we also saw, kind of as a wider point this season, but definitely relevant in this game still, that the Eagles lost Jordan Kelsey, lost Jason Kelsey, and everyone was going to go, the Eagles offensive line is going to take a huge step back. He's been such a stalwart of the offensive line and is so key. Well, Cam Jurgens has come in, and Ridiculous. It's not skipped a beat. And at one point, Jalen Hurts had 6.75 seconds to throw the ball on a touchdown throw. Like, that kind of pocket should not exist in the NFL. It shouldn't even really exist in college. I don't care if you're Alabama playing, Marshall. Well, actually, they've actually got quite a good defensive line this year. Actually, it's not a great example. Playing Toledo. I don't know. Like, that just can't happen. And it's because this team has so much talent and has always drafted so well. And I don't know why it's become in vogue to hate on Howie Roseman for drafting best player available every single year. Because it works. Like, I don't know what people are seeing. Like, this draft class, Cooper DeJean, Quintana Bay, Quinion Mitchell, like, amazing. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, recent years. Like,
who was that linebacker that fell to the third? I can't think of his name. Georgia. Kobe Dean, that's who I was thinking of. Sorry, I completely blanked on his name. But
and Kobe Dean, and he was injured in this game, unfortunately. But he they just have so much talent. And we're forgetting Nolan Smith as well. Like, he fell as well to the second. Like, these guys have just a rota of talent because of how well Harry Roseman has drafted. But the reason why I think Hurts is quietly the weak link, and more widely the passing attack, really, is because they're not really able to push the ball down the field. Looking at the tape from this game, the receivers aren't getting open. It was like the Packers knew exactly where the ball was going to go before it was thrown. And Jalen Hurts can hold on to the ball for a long time, but it doesn't really matter if your receivers aren't separating. He had 2 big-time throws in the last 6 weeks, not including this game, Jalen Hurts. 2 big-time throws in 6 weeks, and 2 of them were in the same game. So in 5 of the last 6 games before this playoff game, he hadn't had a tight window throw deep down the field, which is concerning, I think. And A.J. Brown had 1 catch for 10 yards, which is not what you want your best player, essentially, on offense, barring Saquon Barkley, to have in a playoff game. You need to get that guy going. And Saquon Barkley is great, like you say. Like, he's, been one of the best players in the league this year, regardless of position. But if a team can shut down the run, which, don't get me wrong, is easier said than done, then they could become one-dimensional.
Yeah, and Dom, they've got, obviously, they've also got Devonta Smith as well as a wide receiver 2, who I believe is probably one of, if not the best wide receiver 2 in the league. You can't make life easier for Jalen Hurts. And so I'm decided to go back just to a Harry Roseman the team building point. Is I love how the team's been collated by all different walks of life. You've got Jordan Mailata, who's probably the best tackler in the league, who was a 6th round pick, but obviously was from rugby league. Got Lane Johnson, 1st round pick, Jalen Hurts, 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick. They just always go best player available, and they see talent and no one else does. And although I despise the Eagles as a Giants fan, you've got to respect what they're doing.
Yeah, you absolutely do have to respect what they're doing. On to the Buccaneers Commanders.
Don, we didn't mention the Packers.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
yeah.
You're right. Packers. How could we? Well, it was a pretty forgettable performance, but Nu, what's your Packers take?
Well, so that's actually quite funny. It was a forgettable performance, and I think the reason why it's forgettable is because their team is greater than the sum of its parts. We talked in an earlier episode about how the wide receiver core, there's no superstar there, but they all fit a certain scheme. But I think it shows they don't have a superstar on their team. They really are really lacking that X factor. They've got a great coach and a good squad. That is not going to win you a Super Bowl. They need that superstar player, that diva receiver, that game-wrecking D end. I know they've got Rashawn Gary, I know they've got Romeo Dobbs, but those aren't going to win you a Super Bowl. And I think the Packers are a really well-built team, but I think they're just that one superstar player away. And that's why they're sometimes quite forgettable. They snuck into the playoffs, sort of had a sneaky good season, because there's no one really to rave about. Outside of Matt LaFleur, all their players are good. And there's not really much more to analyse about it. I think they just need that X factor, Dom.
I agree with you. And that kind of links to what my take is on this game, which is that Jordan Love hasn't been the superstar he was at the last half of last year. So, if you don't have superstars if you don't have superstar playmakers, well, it's a bit like Josh Allen. It doesn't really matter if you're a superstar. Same with Mahomes. Has been a tale as old as time, right? Barring obviously when they had Tyreek Hill, but they've won a Super Bowl since then. Jordan Love hasn't been able to find that same form, which got him a big deal. And as a result, the Packers, I've got here as well, need wide receivers. Christian Watson's going to miss significant time in 2025. He struggled to stay healthy this year anyway. So even if he wasn't injured, I would have liked them to draft a wide receiver highly. And yeah, Jaden Reed, I think, has shown that he can be a really nice wide receiver too. But you're right, there is no superstar that you can look to and go, you know what, it's 3rd and 12. Jordan Love's going to make a play. Who's going to catch it? I like their tight ends. I like Tucker Kraft. I like their running backs. I like Josh Jacobs. But again, no star. And you need that blue chip star somewhere. And there's no one to point to. I think that's a great take. I mean, also, it's unfortunate, obviously, that the wide receivers and the Packers generally got really banged up. And if they had won it, they would have been dead on arrival for the next round of the playoffs. So I think it's the best as just neutral fans, as neutral as you can be in these situations, for the Eagles to go through. And they were playing against the stacked Eagles defense, playing really, really well. But regardless, I think you look at this Packers team and you're not convinced that they can compete with the big dogs, even when they are in the playoffs. So they're almost closer to the Broncos than they are to the Eagles, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a good take, Dom. I agree.
Oh, love that. So finally, Buccaneers Commanders 20-23. My Baker Mayfield Buccaneers are going home, and the Jaden Daniels Commanders are advancing. Nu, start with the Bucs.
Oh, it was a real liver punch, this game. Baker with the arm sleeve, the cool unis. I was all there for a Baker Mayfield dub, but wasn't meant to be. And my take from this game is they really miss Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, he's played his last down as a Buck. When he went off the field, he was waving to the crowd. I think he knows it. The front office knows it. And Jalen McMillan had an okay game. I think he's an okay player, just under 500 yards on the year. But he's not really a wide receiver too. And Mike Evans going into year 10, 11 can't be a wide receiver 1 for much longer. And I think that really showed in this game. Bucky Irvin is a really, really good piece, really good rookie. But in terms of wideouts, they just need a bit of youth, a bit of pop, a bit more of excitement. I think T. Higgins would be a great addition. I think there's a lot of good players in that region of the draft that they could really help the Buccaneers. But in this game, the lack of a wide receiver 2 really, really showed. Baker was under pressure a lot of the time. The players downfield were always covered. And it really, I think, was the nail in the coffin for this game.
Yeah, that's a good take. I like that one. Now, I mean, I think Jalen McMillan has definitely shown more in the last like 4 weeks than he has in any other point of the season, which is encouraging. But you're right, you can't continue to rely on Mike Evans, who also weirdly enough has had like the best 4 weeks of his
Yeah, he had like
year.
100 yards in the last 4 games. Or something
Yeah,
ridiculous.
like he's looked really good, and he was bullying Marshall and Lattimore out there, which is
Oh,
usually
my
quite
favorite
a,
rivalry in the NFL. They hate each other.
I know, like it's like a Josh Norman OBJ kind of throwback. But yeah, I agree with you. You can't keep relying on Mike Evans, and they need that next guy to kind of be there, and they need to kind of address that in the draft or free agency. I mean, like for half of these teams here, like the Bills, the Broncos, the Buccaneers, T Higgins, like.
Yeah.
Like T Higgins, man, is such a winner. Is going to be such a winner in this offseason because I can name 7 right now that would absolutely kill to have T Higgins
He's
on
going to
their
get a
team.
bag.
Yeah, and I think the Bucks are one of them. The Broncos are another. The Bills are another. Like and
Panthers, you can name any team, really.
any team, literally any team, any team. That's such a good. I see that, Leah. My take here with the Bucks is that I think Todd Bowles needs to be replaced by Liam Cohen as head coach.
Ooh, okay.
I
Why?
think his clock management, Todd Bowles' clock management, has been repeatedly detrimental to this team's hopes of winning a seriously big game. I think it took him like 10 seconds to call a timeout. I think that they're letting a head coach candidate, like Liam Cohen will be, I think, a head coach this offseason of one of these teams, or will be soon, walk out the door. For what? Because you have like a downgrade currently at head coach. If Todd Bowles was just a defensive coordinator, let alone a head coach, I think he would be on the hot seat with the way this defense has played down the stretch, especially. And they've decided they want Baker Mayfield as their quarterback. Clearly, right? At least for next year and probably into the year after that. Maybe not like super long term, but like he is their quarterback and he's taken them to 2 playoff appearances back to back now. You need to keep the guy that has helped him get there. This is the best version of Baker Mayfield we've seen in his career with Liam Cohen this year in this Buccaneers offense. You need to keep that guy in the building if you want to have Baker Mayfield, the version of Baker Mayfield that can win you playoff games or get you even just to the playoffs, even in a weaker NFC South. So I think it'd be crazy for the Buccaneers, to let the superior candidate walk away, the superior head coaching candidate walk away because they have a fine head coach who I think has made egregious errors.
I understand what you're saying, but the Bucks offensive coordinator last year was Dave Canales, who's now obviously coach of the Panthers. Liam Cohen's only been there for a year. Why couldn't they find another one? They were able to replace a great OC with another great OC. There's clearly something in the woodwork. There's something in the water down in Tampa. But I don't think that's actually a problem, Dom. They've had 2 great offensive coordinators in 2 years.
Yeah, but how are you going to bank on there being a third, or are you just going to, or are you going to stop the second from walking out the building?
So was Liam Cohen, Cohen, the QB coordinator for the Bucks before or not?
I don't know what he was before specifically, but I know that he was the internal promotion for.
Okay, yeah. Because I was about to say that Baker Mayfield for the last 2 years has played at a very high level. Obviously, this year slightly more elevated, but 2 years at an elite level, I would definitely say.
Yeah, no, like Baker Mayfield has looked his best these last 2 years, and I think you're already toying with things when you let Dave Canales walk out the building. And obviously that's worked kind of well for both parties. The Panthers are obviously happy with what they've got from him down the season, and also the Buccaneers haven't skipped a beat with Liam Cohen. But he was the Rams offensive coordinator in 2022, Liam Cohen.
Okay.
Sean McVay's hairdressers getting head coaching gigs. So to have the actual offensive coordinator is pretty strong. And then he was the Kentucky offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for 1 year, and then was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator.
Okay.
So, I would not let this guy walk out the building. I would give him the head coaching gig now. I think it's an upgrade. I think it's that won't leave a good taste in your mouth. But look, it's not about making friends. It's about winning championships. And I think Liam Cohen gives you the best chance to win championships.
Poor Baker Mayfield, man. Another OC, another year, never for the same 2 years. That is so difficult.
Exactly. My guy needs a break. Right, and finally, the Washington Commanders. What's your take?
So I thought the Commanders had a good game. But my warning to all Commanders fans and the Commanders fan office is don't do a New York Giants. One playoff win does not solve all your problems. And the Bucks barely snuck into the playoffs because the Falcons fumbled it on the last week of the season. It was a good win, a good showing, but they are going to get absolutely ruined by the Lions the next round. And don't think it's time to go all in. One playoff win does not mean Hail Mary, all out attack. It really does not. You've got some really nice pieces. Lock down your pieces long term. Help the offense. Do not think you're ready to contend right now, because you're not.
I like that in theory. I definitely like that in theory. It's just they're still in the playoffs, and they did look pretty good.
Well, so did the Giants when they beat the Vikings. So it's easy to beat one of these first round teams on the road and look really impressive. But when you start playing those more serious sides away from home, it's a problem.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. My take is that Jayden Daniels is special.
He's a good player.
Yeah, he's a good player. Fair play, Jayden Daniels. You got me. You win this one. I infamously at this point was very low on Jayden Daniels in the draft. I didn't think he'd be able to play anywhere near the level he's played this year in his rookie year, let alone, I was saying it at all, let alone just this year. I mean, some of the throws that he's making, I think what's really driven it home to me is that his ability to throw a fade ball down the sideline is second to none in the league, genuinely second to none. Like, it is so good. Like that throw to Terry McLaurin where he's got pressure in his face, he changes the protection at the line. You couldn't place it in his hands better. And Jayden Daniels has repeatedly made those throws season in, game out. And this is what kind of gives me pause and links back to what you're saying here, Nu, is that we had this with Jordan Love, we had this with CJ Stroud last year, where we're ready to kind of crown the next generation of quarterbacks. And I would say this year that Jayden Daniels has played like a top 7-8 quarterback in the league this year, week in, week out. Yeah. And that was exactly what I said this time last year about CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, and look at how their seasons have gone this year. So I'm not ready to completely blow it all up and say that I was totally wrong. Obviously, I was wrong. I'm not trying to kind of save any face at this point. Like, I was definitely wrong in my pre-draft evaluation. But I think we shouldn't, a bit like with what you're saying, Nu, we should be a little bit cautious just because there is an element of this still being all very new and being unproven, and when they can go back to back and then again continue to rack up these playoff appearances and playoff wins, then we can really start thinking about the Commanders as real contenders rather than just say a kind of flash in the pan.
Yeah, Dom, also got in mind, Cliff Kingsbury-led offenses always tail off. It's a tale as old as time.
I know, but
he's been all these head coaching roles. But first of all, stay away if you're the Bears, because he's been linked to the Bears heavily, because obviously he coached Caleb in college. That would be an absolute nightmare hire, because I think Cliff Kingsbury puts up good stats, and especially early on, with the quick pass game, the screen game, the play action game, is very effective. But so far, he's always been found out. And that's why I'm scared for the Commanders, because obviously I believe Jayden Daniels is a great talent, but I don't think Cliff Kingsbury can take them to the promised land.
Interesting. Well, Nu, we will find out this weekend, the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I think the best week of the season. Ben Shepley agrees with me there. And we've just covered now the wild card round. We haven't obviously done Rams-Vikings because that is airing tonight. As we're recording this will be uploaded tomorrow. So by the time this drops, it will be out. But obviously, we don't know the winner or loser. Nu, quickly, winner or loser? Winner or loser?
I'm going to go Vikings.
I think the Rams are going to win. Well, we'll see in the next one where we'll review the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. But if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Nu, we're almost at 400 subscribers these days.
We're blowing up. Join the unsportsmanlike army is what I'm going to say. It's growing quickly. Be here before it gets big.
Exactly. Punch your ticket now. We might remember who you are before we go stratospheric, and I need everyone to delete my number because I'm going to have a new life. But like I said, if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you are listening on YouTube, leave a comment, leave a like, let us know you're there. I've been your host, Dom Corbs. That's my co-host, Nick Corbs. We've been Unsportsmanlike Conduct. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.